I thought the Eagles set the tone right away on that opening kickoff to obviously get that ball out, which was a little controversial, but and it's just never seemed like a game, at least from my perspective, watching at home, that the Packers were really threatening all that much at any point.
Yeah, survive and advance. That was the key in this game for the Eagles. It wasn't a prolific offensive performance. The defense, which finished number one in the league in yards, and finished number one in the league in DVOA, number two in scoring defense, but really number one in points allowed. They were outstanding, and that was the key in this game. 3 interceptions, then as you mentioned, the forced fumble on the opening kickoff, so 4 turnovers forced. That's what the Eagles needed in this game. Green Bay came into this game as a top 10 offense. I know they were missing key wide receivers, but what jumped out to me, frankly, was the way the Eagles played at all 3 levels. Nolan Smith, the edge rusher, had the best game of his career. Zach Bond, huge interception in the middle of the field, and the Eagles corners getting their first interceptions of the season. It was that type of performance that the Eagles needed because the offense was still a bit lackluster in this game.
Would we get any insight as far as a book report from A.J. Brown, his performance on the sidelines yesterday, inner excellence? Did we get the whole breakdown of what he kind of read and got from that performance yesterday? I mean, is there a true concern? I mean, is that just a fun moment, or what do we think about this offensive side of the ball for Philly?
Yeah, so first thing, there's a story up on allphly.com right now that will take you through A.J. Brown's reading habits on the sideline. This is something that he does fairly frequently. It's just that the cameras caught it. But this book that he has, it's dog-eared, highlighted, underlined. He reads it between drives. He attributes it as giving him like a sense of peace and calmness, whether he's scoring touchdowns or whether he's not involved in the game. And the reality is, he said he wasn't frustrated yesterday. This is something that he reads often. You can actually find still images of him in games when he's had 9 catches, reading this in between drives. But as far as concern for the offense, look, the way the Eagles have played going back to the bye week, and they only have 1 loss since the bye week in week 5, has been run the ball, take care of the ball, not turning it over. So the passing game should be more explosive when you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. But it's going to reinforce to Jalen Hurts, don't turn the ball over, don't turn the ball over. And you see that. They were +4 yesterday. And they've been in the plus side of the turnover margin really throughout these past 3 months. So now the performance that Jalen had yesterday won't beat the Lions. So they do need to play better. Is there concern? It depends, right? The talent's there. The offensive line is certainly there. Saquon Barkley was the best running back in football this season. I don't want to say they can flip a switch, but they've shown throughout the season that, the Pittsburgh game, for instance, when they need to pass, they can pass. But yeah, that game yesterday, I'm getting into the nitty-gritty here, but it reminds me of the Eagles' win over Atlanta in the postseason in 2017, so January 2018. They won the Super Bowl that year. They did just enough to get by the Falcons. And like I said, survive in advance. That really seems to be the message inside that building.
Well, if there's one thing that maybe concerned me coming out of the game, it might have been the injuries, especially on defense, that seemed to start to add up into that game. What do we know about the guys that went out?
Yeah, Nakobe Dean, that's the injury that's brutal for the Eagles. He's going to miss significant time here. He's really been a heartbeat in the middle of that Eagles defense. He's been, he's someone who emerged this year in year 3, earned his starting job during the summer, is the signal caller, is a real explosive linebacker. And the Eagles don't have a lot of depth at that spot, right? Zach Bond's a first-team All-Pro, and deservedly so. But the second linebacker now, taking Dean's place is going to be Oren Burks. Oren Burks is someone who, when the Eagles signed him, Howie Roseman told Nick Sirianni, this is one of the best, number 3, number 4 linebackers in the league. And that was said as a compliment, but that's not a number 2 linebacker. And so that affects things. They also have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., their 5th-round pick, but that's it on the roster. So this is a major injury. We'll see how it affects the Eagles. But whenever you lose a starting linebacker in the postseason, and it's a spot where you don't have a lot of depth, it is concerning.
When we start to turn the page, though, to Detroit, and you look at, the Gotti, points per game, over 30 plus, or 32 points per game. That's got Ben Johnson as the top, head coaching candidate out there during the coaching carousel. Is it going to come down to, as far as the best path to victory, Philly trying to get Detroit to play their style of ball, where, keep that scoring down, maybe win the time of possession and grind it out with a deep play defense in rushing attack?
Well, they got to get there first, right? I mean, first, they'll have to beat either Minnesota or the Rams. But yeah, when you're kind of looking at the team's Super Bowl path, if they're able to, if Detroit wins and the Eagles win and they meet in the NFC Championship game, the Eagles are going to have to put up points. That's the reality of this. I don't think the grinded out way is going to be the path to winning in Detroit. I think it's going to be, and it's why I said earlier, Jalen's performance won't cut it against Detroit, because I think if they're going to make the Super Bowl and they're going to win on the road, what they're going to have to do is get A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, have this offense play the way it was initially designed, which was to be explosive, to put up points through the air, and then have Saquon Barkley running the ball too, right? That, like, from a talent perspective, the Eagles are as loaded with top skill players as there is in the league. I don't think the Eagles make the Super Bowl winning games in the teens. When it comes to Detroit, I think they can beat Minnesota or the Rams that way, but I think they're going to have to score into the 20s and 30s if it comes down to beating Detroit.
The other thing too, I didn't necessarily like yesterday, Zach, was, and I don't know how much of it was on the play calling or how much of it was just on Jalen not taking care of himself. He took some hard shots in that game, and I don't care about him running because he needs to. That's part of his game. But I just felt like he could have done a better job protecting himself. There was one in particular in the second half where I thought he could have gone down sooner, and he ends up getting wrapped up, and his head goes back and hits on the grass. And by the way, the grass yesterday looked outstanding, but was it made out of concrete? Because, like, it seemed like they were hitting hard in that game, but everybody was hitting the turf and going down with something, like, throughout that entire game, especially on the Packers side. They had so many injuries in that game.
Yeah, so they resodded the field. I was on that turf throughout the week of practice last week. It looked good. I don't think it was harder than it usually is, but I just think it was two physical teams for sure yesterday. Now, as far as Jalen taking hits, this is something we could be talking about any week during the past 5 years, right? This is kind of, I don't want to say the way he plays, but yeah, he takes hits, and you make a really good point about his head hitting the turf. When he had a concussion against Washington a few weeks ago, a lot of the attention was paid to, like, the helmet contact. My understanding is the concussion occurred presumably when his head hit the turf, not when he took the hit itself. So yeah, this is something that has come up frequently. It's come up with Sirianni. It's come up with Hurts, and we'll have to pay attention to it. He hasn't. The only concussion he's had in his career, or at least documented one, was a few weeks ago against Washington. But he has dealt with various ailments. You were there, Adam, in Chicago a few years ago when he injured his shoulder. He has had ankle issues. He had a finger issue last year. So he's healthy right now. But no, he does need to be cognizant of that for sure.
And real quick too, with the head hitting the turf. I mean, I thought it was interesting that Romeo Doubs, he's wearing a Guardian cap, and his head hits the turf in this game. And he was, I mean, that looked like he had a concussion earlier this season too. So maybe it's just them adding up or whatever. But I mean, they showed him walking back to the locker room, and he was clearly suffering from that. And that's with a Guardian cap on, which and I know not too many players have actually been wearing those in games. So the opportunities maybe to get a concussion while wearing one aren't extremely high, but that's the first one I can remember seeing all season with somebody actually wearing one of those.
Yeah, good point. And, the Eagles don't have anyone who wears the Guardian caps during games, but, I know players have the option to do it. And the Dobbs injury was scary when it happened, in the sense that the sideline cleared. He was on the turf for a while. It's a second concussion this year, so absolutely something that must be monitored.
All right, Zach, we'll let you go here. Great stuff as always. And you guys are certainly, just like us, be watching that game tonight very closely to see who the Eagles host next weekend. But the Eagles do move on. Make sure you're following Zach on Twitter at ZBerm, Blue Sky, and then also all of his work at PHLY. Great stuff. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We all silly like the mayor.